Well, that's that. The Florida Panthers beat the Edmonton Oilers in 6 games in the Stanley Cup Finals to win the Stanley Cup back to back for the first time in franchise history. Congrats to little brother. I know that a lot of people, including myself, would have liked the Game 7, but the Panthers were just too dominant. That's hard for me to swallow as a Tampa fan because I hate them a lot. But there's something to be said about losing to the eventual champions. And I think that if the roles were reversed and we had beaten them, we would actually probably be holding the cup right now. But I don't want to talk about what Tampa did wrong in their series against Florida. I want to talk about the Stanley Cup Finals. The fact is, I think both teams are way better than their previous matchup last year. But I also do think that the Panthers somehow got more physical, which I didn't even know was possible. Most notably, acquiring Brad Marchand at the trade deadline. I think nobody saw that coming, especially coming from a rival team in the Boston Bruins. I would like to point out that Brad Marchand is doing the exact same thing that the analysts of the NHL said Connor McDavid would be doing in the Stanley Cup Finals. Craziest part of that whole thing is that Marchand's 37, which I think is just wild that he's able to even produce this kind of offense at that age. I think that's truly just remarkable. Now, it sounds like I'm giving the Cats a lot of praise, and I am. It is very hard to win the Stanley Cup back-to-back. We did it. I don't really care what everyone says about us winning Mickey Mouse Cups, when obviously pretty much all the players said that it was a significantly harder season to win in given the circumstances. But I will say this, the Panthers earned my respect this year. From a rivalry standpoint, I absolutely despise them, especially what they did to Brandon Hagel in our series. But I will say, weirdly enough, this team really made me like Brad Marchand. Whether you love or hate Marchand, you gotta admit, he is a hilarious guy. I think he's so funny. And I do think that he truly is a leader. I think he honestly deserved to hold up that cup a second time. Top line to bottom pairing, the Florida Panthers team is rock solid everywhere. When your top 6 is Barkov, Reinhart, Rodriguez, Kachuk, Bennett, and Verhaeghe, that is alone enough to carry you pretty much all the way to the conference finals, in my opinion. But as evidenced with the Edmonton Oilers, hockey is probably the most team sport it could possibly get. No 1 or 2 or even 6 superstars that are really good at scoring are going to carry you all the way. And so their gritty bottom 6, crazy. Very physical. I actually think way more physical than last year. I think their defense was way better than it was last year. They upgraded from Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who I think is okay, to Seth Jones. Incredible. Putting all the hate aside, I totally thought that the Panthers were actually just not going to make it back to the finals this year. And not because of their depth. Their depth was absolutely fine. I was actually concerned if Sergei Bobrovsky could even compete with that level that he had last year. I thought at the age that he was going to start to show signs of major regression. I mean, he's so old now, but somehow stood on his head for an entire run. They didn't even have to bring in their backup goaltender, which just kind of shows you that Bob really is an elite goalie. I think Bob's one weakness is that if he gets peppered with shots, a lot of them start to go in, but because the defense is so great in front of him, he really doesn't have to do all that much. But when he does have to be relied on, he delivers every single time, and that's what you need in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Which brings me to Edmonton. Unpopular opinion, but I don't think Stuart Skinner was the main reason the Oilers lost this series. Don't get me wrong, he was one of them. He was very clearly one of them, but I don't think he was the main reason. I think a majority of Oilers fans look at their defense with rose-colored glasses because on paper, the only good defenseman that I saw consistently really was Mattias Ekholm. And I'm not even an Oilers fan. I'm just saying, I think that's kind of crazy. On paper, this was a much better Oilers team than we saw last year. They upgraded from Cody Ceci, who I think is a fine defenseman, and he was with Dallas this season. He did all right, I thought, to Jake Wallman. They also got John Klingberg, who is a very physical defenseman. That's kind of what he does. That's what he's known for. Evan Bouchard was supposed to kind of settle into his role as a defenseman with Mattias Ekholm, and that went really well until the finals. Brett Kulak has also been there for a while, and he showed very briefly some moments of greatness throughout, honestly, the entire playoffs. But the player that I can't stand that apparently is supposed to make this Oilers defense really good is Darnell Nurse. Nurse is getting paid $9.2 million and some change, the most paid Oilers defenseman at the current moment. Nurse has this contract until 2030. And in my opinion, Nurse was a ghost this playoffs. Maybe a little less so in the previous series, but against Florida, he was nowhere to be found. It doesn't help that Evan Bouchard turns pucks over as part of his NHL career. I don't really know what people see in this guy. He kind of just seems average to me. He did have that really brilliant pass to Connor McDavid that eventually led to the Leon Draisaitl goal in, I think, Game 2. But with the amount of turnovers that Evan Bouchard produced for the Panthers, there's no way the Panthers are not going to score on that. That's just kind of what they do. They punish you for making mistakes, and they punish you hard. That and their forecheck is their game. They force you to play perfect hockey, which of course puts the stress on you, and then you actually do make mistakes. Unfortunately, the Edmonton Oilers are the example of a team where you sink most of the cap into these two great players in Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and then you have barely no cap to fill out the rest of the roster and make a very, very good hockey team. There was a couple of other things. Zach Hyman being injured, that was a big piece they lost. That's basically an anchor on their second line. The fact that during this past offseason, the Oilers management said that goaltending was not an issue. You've got to be kidding me. I'm so sorry to say this because I really do love Stuart Skinner, I think, as a person, but he is not an NHL caliber goaltender. There were genuinely moments where Calvin Pickard, the backup goaltender, was doing much better than Stuart Skinner, which begs the question for Connor McDavid. Does he stay in Edmonton? I'll be honest with you. I think at this point, McDavid will do anything he can to get his hands on a cup. He can get all these Hart trophies and Conn Smythes and whatever else the NHL throws at him. He can be advertised as the NHL's best player in the league at the moment, but it doesn't matter to him if he has never won the Stanley Cup. Now, that's a hard thing to gauge because Leon Draisaitl just signed an extension with Edmonton that puts him there through 2033. And I think McDavid and Draisaitl would both like to win together and win their Stanley Cup together for the first time, but no team, not even if you're the San Jose Sharks, is going to take that contract because you're probably going to have to bring two of them in. If McDavid goes by himself, he can go wherever he wants. When a generational talent like Connor McDavid comes onto the trade market in the NHL, you can't look away from that. Some teams that have their core pre-established will trade boatloads of prospects and draft money and players to get somebody like Connor McDavid. It's like if Sidney Crosby left the Penguins in his prime or Alexander Ovechkin left the Capitals. I would say the same thing if Nikita Kucherov left the Tampa Bay Lightning. I really hope that doesn't happen, though. The point is, McDavid will do whatever it takes at this point, I think, to get a cup, but it's just a matter of where. Now, do I actually think he's going to leave Edmonton realistically? Probably not. I do think if he makes it to the finals with the Oilers again and loses again, then I think he'll probably find something else. I think Chris Knoblauch is a great coach for the Oilers, but I do think he got outcoached this entire series. I do think that players like Zach Hyman and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Evander Kane just cannot keep up with the offense that Draisaitl and McDavid generate. But the Oilers are going about building this team all wrong because they're building it around McDavid and Draisaitl when really they need to be building it around everybody. The reason the Florida Panthers have been so dominant is because, yes, there are star players that stick out, but it's all one cohesive unit. With the Oilers, it feels like it's McDavid, Draisaitl, and then everybody else. And I don't care if you have star-studded players on your roster or not, that doesn't make Stanley Cup winning teams. I think that there is a very real chance that the Oilers will move on from Stuart Skinner and probably find an actual good goaltender that won't choke on them every single game. The Oilers could probably pick up any goaltender at this point and they would play better than Skinner. I truly believe that. There's been a rumor going around that McDavid is looking to play for a team in the East that starts with the letter T, and it's not Toronto. Now, do I think that's going to happen? It's not going to happen. Are you kidding me? What I do think is that we'll hear out the Oilers on what they want for Connor McDavid, and we're always open to that, but I really just don't think we would go for that. We just signed Jay Gensel to a deal that puts him with us through 2031. He's making $9 million, which ate up most of the cap when we traded both Sergachev and let Stamkos walk. We signed a couple of bottom six forwards, also including Yanni Gourde, and that ate up a lot of our caps as well. I will say, given our current cap situation, it is for sure doable, but the thing is, you would have to trade a superstar. To be honest, I could really see Braden Point going to Edmonton for us to get Connor McDavid. But obviously, Point would just not be the only thing in that trade. We would probably have draft prospects in there, maybe some bottom tier forward that we just want to try and get rid of, all of that stuff just to get McDavid. The thing is, Braden Point has a no trade clause, meaning if he doesn't want to go play in Edmonton, he's not going to go play in Edmonton. And there's a decent amount of our players that have something like that or some sort of conditional trade option, and that's why I don't think it's going to happen. If McDavid decides to go to Tampa for whatever reason, I'm very interested to see how that's going to unfold. Even if that rumor is true, I'm treating it like it's true, but I'm not even for sure about that. But then it begs the question, it's like, if he doesn't go to Tampa, where's he going to go? That is a super hard thing to figure out. I definitely think he would like to stay close to Edmonton. That's kind of his home. Maybe stay with a Canadian team. But the fact is, if he stays with Edmonton, there's a good chance he's probably not going to win a cup with them. McDavid is almost 28, and he's breaking almost every single NHL milestone there is to break. But for me, it is so hard sometimes to buy into the fact that Connor McDavid is the best player in the league right now, but he's never won the cup. You can put all the Maurice Rocket Richard trophies and the Hart trophies and the Conn Smythes aside, because the Stanley Cup is what you're playing for every single year. And like I said, at this point, I think McDavid would do anything to even lift that cup over his head. You also have to remember that an NHL great like Alex Ovechkin didn't even hold the cup until 2018 when the Capitals won it. And this is the same Alexander Ovechkin that broke Wayne Gretzky's record, which is a testament to show you that no matter how talented you are, the Stanley Cup is one of the hardest trophies to win in sports, which makes it more impressive when you do it back to back. Hopefully McDavid can figure it out, whether that's with Edmonton or without them, because I think everybody in the NHL wants to see him hold the cup at least one time in his career. It was a great Stanley Cup Finals. I enjoyed watching it. Congrats to the Florida Panthers for being the second Florida team to be back-to-back champions. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down below.